drug and substance abuse, societal issues, women and children, and so much more. Now, it's crucial to approach these subjects with empathy and understanding. These issues often intertwine with societal norms and can lead to tough conversations. It is important to create a safe space for dialogue where individuals can share their experiences without fear or judgment. I am Jumai Manson. Join me every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on the program Inside Today on Global Television. Women in leadership roles. Now, leadership has no gender, only vision. True leadership defined not by gender, but by the strength of one's vision, character, and ability to inspire change. Women in leadership roles continue to prove that effective leadership is rooted in competence, creativity, and compassion, not in stereotypes about who should lead. Now, across politics, business, and community governance, women bring diverse ideas, collaborative approaches, and a strong focus on inclusivity and long-term progress. Now, yet many capable women still face barriers such as gender bias, limited representation, and unequal access to opportunities. Now, you as an individual recognizing that leadership has no gender, only vision, means breaking those barriers and creating environments where women can rise based on merit and potential. When women are empowered to lead, organizations become more innovative, communities grow stronger, and societies move closer to true equality. Hello and welcome to Inside Today. I am Jumai Manson. I am being joined by Mrs. Esther Ehibome Michelia. She's a public policy appraisal and human development expert. We will be delving into a very sensitive issue. It is all about women in leadership roles. Leadership has no gender, only vision. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Now.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Inside Today on Global Television. And I am being joined by Mrs. Esther Ehobame and Mrs. Esther Ehobame Michelia. She is a public policy appraisal and human development expert. Good afternoon, ma'am. It's great to have you on the program, Inside Today.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
All right. Now, like I mentioned before, we're going to be delving into something that concerns you and I. It's all about women in leadership. And I said it has no gender and only vision. Now, looking at this critically on this point, how does the idea that leadership has no gender, only vision challenge existing power structures that have historically excluded women from leadership roles?
Thank you very much. Well, the truth is, either through nurturing, socialization, or stereotyping, we have come to imagine, against all odds or against accepted definitions and global understanding of leadership, that leadership is not about vision, but we have many schools of thought and results over the years that have showed that leadership is a two-part thing. Yes, you can be born into leadership because you come from a leadership line, but there is a significant portion of leadership that is trained, acquired, modified, and developed. And that is what shapes vision. And to that extent, women and men do not have equal opportunity, as we know, in terms of shaping their vision, developing that vision, and being able to access spaces where they can demonstrate that leadership skill. Leadership as a skill is acquired and informs vision.
Very interesting. Now, I know from your experience in global policy and gender mainstreaming. Now, what structural reforms are most urgent to ensure women's leadership is not an exception but a norm?
Well, I will talk from the CEDAW committee standpoint. The COVID experience, the global pandemic, for the COVID global pandemic, actually demonstrated that women's absence at the leadership table has significant impact on goods, services, products, and actually the very fabric of society, because we found that countries that had women in leadership actually outperformed, fared much better, differently from countries that were not led by women. And this is because style of leadership, compassion, empathy, being less risk averse between men and women, the risk aversion level between men and women is quite distinctive. And this comes to play in leadership. And therefore, women's presence at leadership tables, be it on the board, in parliament, in the executive decision making, even in the judiciary, in the military, you find that decisions around war, command positions, strategies to be used, they differ from between men and women. And it's been found even in peace agreements that involve women tend to adopt styles and strategies that make that peace accord to outlast the ones that are agreed by only men. And you find that in the business world, where women are not in leadership, you find that performance is less by 36.4%. So structural changes are just fundamental. And for us in Nigeria at this point in time, we're looking at constitutional reforms. And the reason we're saying constitutional reforms is that is the beginning of structural reforms, because where there is no law, there's no offense. So if there is no, the political parties are still covered because there is no law mandating them to deliberately embark on a strategy to enroll women, enlist them, groom them, finance them, because elections and leadership at the governance and political level is usually a party affair. So it is the party that there is lack of sufficient rules that will guide the structuring of party operations so that they can deliver gender results and tap on the huge resources of women. Because you would see that, like in Nigeria, in sectors that have put targets about women in management, like in the banking and finance industry,
exactly.
Many people don't know that it is an internal policy by the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Nigeria that has given us the results that we see of women as leaders and heads of big financial corporations, and they're performing very well.
Yes, they are.
So if they can manage the financial sector well, and we have a lot of women who are trained, who are lawyers, senior advocates, judges, and we have women who are astute politicians, who are professionals in many sectors. They can lend to national development through the democratic system and the political governance system, particularly at the legislative level, where the laws that govern our entire lives are articulated. So the absence of women there actually impacts on half of the population, including the youth and the children. So it's a huge challenge that we really, as a country, I know we are putting the efforts together, but most countries have learned that it's the beginning. It's a first step. After that, then comes other reforms that will consolidate on the legal basis that you have to draw on the resources of both men and women in legal leadership, in legislative leadership.
I know, Ms. Esther, we've just spoke about legislative leadership. Now, let's talk about technology now. Now, what role does technology, including innovations like mobile applications, play in expanding women's access to leadership and economic decision-making spaces? Those are really big platforms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It would shock you to know that despite the galloping growth in the world of technology, women are still underrepresented. And from what we see,
yes, we are.
Technology is structural reforms are not undertaken, rules mandating the business sector in their business operations to make room for women to be able to lend their skills and their talents, either as inventors, innovators, as service providers, and to drive the services that they undertake. If there are no rules guiding that, and there's no accountability system in that space, you find that it will just continue to widen. And so investing in men's digital skills, technology, STEM education, so that women and men, boys and girls, can actually be able to participate in this new digital economy that we see has huge advantages, but without the skills, without the experience. We know that there's already a gender digital divide. And while the gap was 20% like 5 years ago, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed.
So what do we do to make that change now? Because women, we're doing a lot when it comes to innovations and, of course, digital space. It's just that we're not being heard, or the awareness is really low compared to the men, basically.
Well, I wish I would send you the link for the events that we are having in Geneva in the wings of the Business and Human Rights Forum.
I would love that.
What we're trying to do is to get people to understand that without accountability systems in place that will compel private sector operators and governments themselves in their ESG, their environmental sustainability and frameworks to regulate. It's a regulatory issue that the laws must be there, that they set targets for women in leadership in the tech industry, that they set targets for enrolling and onboarding women innovators, that they actually ensure that goods and services that are produced are sensitive and responsive to the needs of both men and women. Because you find that a lot of mobile applications and technology products that are out there are not easily, they're not friendly by gender. And of course, you realize that women's digital literacy rate is lower. So who will invest in digital literacy?
Exactly.
And we need beyond just corporate social responsiveness, which people build parks, and we need more of that, where people invest, in tech innovation for girls and for women, so that there can be livelihood changes.
Exactly.
Because a woman who is producing using manual productivity techniques in the world of technology cannot cope. The competitiveness would just be higher, way above her level. So introducing smaller gadgets, tech-driven gadgets that are usable at the domestic level, because a lot of women, because of the burdens and the roles that they bear in society, which many women are happy with. They love to be mothers, they love to be homemakers, but they also need to generate income to contribute to family growth. So if the technology is not there that is usable for them within their own world and at their level of production, then they get, the value chains leave them behind, they can compete. And so there needs to be clear rules around the game. And for people who offer products who are not gender friendly or do not recognize security and safeguards that we need differently for men and women, there needs to be both incentives and sanctions so that we can get a clear understanding of how we use technology to harness the power of women, to harness that consumer power, because women are actually huge consumers, but are they getting commensurate results from the consumption that they pay for? Or are there rules that will enable those consumption rules to be better moderated in a way that women's violations are safeguarded, people are safeguarded, their domestic and family needs and community needs are also safeguarded.
Fantastic. Now, I want to talk a bit about your work with United Nations and, of course, CEDAW. Now, with all of that, what key insights have emerged about the barriers women face in attaining leadership roles across different regions?
Well, what we see is that even when we have the laws, the budgets, gender-responsive budgets, procurement and access to markets, the international financial architecture is such that what we have seen over time is a gender monopoly of markets, is a gender monopoly of technology, and a gender monopoly of procurement opportunities, which is a huge global market. It's a 13 trillion market annually, but you find that less than 10% women access it, and in some regions like ours, is less than 1% women participated in this huge procurement market. And so it is reforming those systems, reforming those laws, setting mandatory targets and criteria that are socially inclusive, that will then enable women to enter, and the environment will be suitable for them. At their own pace. They would not have to face stiff competition with older companies. And of course, on the other hand, you need rules that will mandate bigger companies to actually outsource and do some kind of budding system for younger or smaller women, small enterprises, so that they can learn the art of competing, the art of bidding, the art of procurement, and then they can also become suppliers even at the local level, so that the community will benefit from women's productive skills and their goods and services.
Fantastic. Now, let us talk about other countries now. How can, or in your own opinion, how can countries embed gender-inclusive leadership models into public institutions to reduce discrimination and accelerate women's participation in governance?
Well, a lot of that is the regulatory frameworks that countries put on, because what we have seen around the world is that most countries, their constitutions are generic, they're non-discriminatory.
Exactly.
So when you move from a constitution to the laws, and then you move from the laws to the policies, and then you move to the regulations that inform or enforce those policies, that's where you begin to see the gaps and the weaknesses. That yes, there might be a target, but without compliance mechanisms, without sanctions, incentives to pull people. I can give you examples of quite a number of countries. Some
Please
countries,
go ahead.
Procurement, they actually have certificates. So you must have first a target, which is the first thing. And most countries have a minimum of 30% target set, like for women and for other groups. And then they have a certificate that is actually issued that allows women to be able to participate without going through. So they're concessionary participating pathways for them. So some waivers are given, and with a time frame for them to upskill themselves. And after that period, then they have to compete like everybody. Then you also have preconditions for bidding, even for huge companies. In some African countries and some other countries around the world, that huge companies who are wanting to seek government procurement actually must demonstrate that they have met the gender targets for the country. And for Nigeria, we have our Women's Economic Empowerment Policy. How are you responding to that? If we are reforming our procurement or other laws, how are you adhering to the standards that are set there? And if you don't meet those, because they are pre-qualification criteria, it drives the public and private sector to actually comply with the rules and the constitutional provisions of non-discrimination. But if you don't follow it through, those constitutional provisions, never materialize in the lives of women, particularly when it comes to procurement, access to financial capital, access to markets, and of course, competing in the world of technology.
You know, at this point, we're going to go on a very quick break, Miss Esther Ehobame Michelle. Let's go on a very quick break. The program Inside Today continues shortly. Stay tuned. Right, you're welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Inside Today on Global Television. And like I mentioned, I have a very important personality on the program. She is Esther Ehobame Michelle. She's a public policy appraisal and human development expert. And we're looking at the topic women in leadership roles. Now, leadership has no gender, only vision. Yes, vision to bring it forward. And of course, Mrs. Esther Ehobame, thank you so much for being here on the program. So let's continue with the topic of discuss at about this time. Are you here?
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for having me again. And I hope that I'm adding value to your conversation.
Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Now, let's look at economic empowerment. Now, in what ways does economic empowerment directly translate into stronger leadership opportunities for women, especially in developing economies?
You know, when we spoke before, I told you about gender monopoly of markets.
Yes, you did.
Of the financial market, of the banking market, of the insurance market. You see, patriarchy over time has actually structured markets in a way that it's the strongest that keep getting. And so when you do not have access to capital, then it just translates to your inability to finance elections, to influence decisions, to be able to build a constituency of people who believe in you so that you can drive your vision, and also to be able to respond to the needs of society at large. To invest in a company, you need seed capital to be able to start up a company. You need even more capital to be able to scale up a company.
Very true.
If you do not have those resources, and these resources almost always come from interaction either in the financial market or in the procurement market or in the political market, where you then build alliances and partnerships, and then you have access to authority and governance. So we in our GR40 actually elaborated these linkages and intersections. Is that there is an intersection between women's leadership and their access and presence in political leadership and in economic leadership. With your family. So that's why you see that poverty is highly feminized in many countries. And it is highly feminized, and it is more difficult for women to get out of poverty, also by virtue of their multiple burdens, you know, the burden of child rearing, of pregnancy, you know, of nurturing the family.
True.
That often affects their performance, like in the career. So if they drop out to nurture a family, that is not seen as contributing to building the human capital of a nation. But can you imagine? And there are countries who are going through what I'm about to say now, without wanting to call names. Countries where over time, because the women have seen that child rearing and contribution to nurturing the next family, the next generation, just distorts their trajectory in their careers. They've decided just to opt out of child rearing or marriage, you know.
Really?
And you find that years down the line, those countries are now in a dire situation of creating the next generation. They do not have sufficient population to take over in the future. And then some are even giving incentives for women to be mothers and to marry. So we need to realize that motherhood, family nurturing is a huge contribution.
Blessing and a contribution, yes.
Capital development of a nation. It is the very fabric of a nation.
Yes, it is.
While we are not saying pay for it, we are saying provide the right enabling environment and the ecosystem that will allow that to thrive.
All right, we are going to come back and listen to what Mrs. Esther Ehobame is going to say, but let's quickly go on a very quick break. The program continues shortly. Stay tuned.
That human angle topic on family, marriage, peer pressure, drug and substance abuse, societal issues, women and children, and so much more. Now, it's crucial to approach these subjects with empathy and understanding. These issues often intertwine with societal norms and can lead to tough conversations. It is important to create a safe space for dialogue where individuals can share their experiences without fear or judgment. I am Jumai Manson. Join me every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on the program Inside Today on Global Television.
All right, you're welcome back from that very short break. And Mrs. Esther Ehobame is here with me. Mrs. Esther Ehobame Michelia, she is a public policy appraisal and human development expert. And we're still talking about this particular issue about women in leadership roles. Leadership has no gender, only vision. And of course, Ms. Esther Ehobame, quickly now, before we wrap it up on the program, what's the way forward?
Well, like you said, the way forward is reforming structures, reforming the laws that guide and shape our institutions, that shape norms and values, and that shape the interaction within society. Because when there's no rule, there's no offense.
Exactly.
So first are constitutional changes, then you need firm, regulatory systems and compliance mechanisms. If there is no way where people are monitored and compliance is enforced, you find that people usually will fall back to the old ways of doing things. It's just the nature of man. It's more convenient because change is difficult. Transformation is not cheap. So working out all of that whole system and then equipping the women because they are right now not on the same level. They don't have the same level of access, opportunity, and financial muscle to be able to engage and to contribute to family. You find that societies that actually empower the women and create these systems, enabling environments and compliance arrangements actually become better. Their economies are more vibrant, they are more sustainable, and you find that the quality of life from cradle to grave increases. In those societies.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Esther Ehobame Michelia. She is a public policy appraisal and human development expert. Thank you so much for being a part of the program Inside Today. It's well appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Women in leadership roles remind us that true leadership is defined not by gender, but by the clarity of one's vision and the courage to pursue it. When women are empowered to lead, institutions become more inclusive, communities become more resilient, and societies unlock their full potential. Now, breaking the barriers that limit women's participation is not simply a gender issue, it is a development imperative. As we embrace the principle that leadership has no gender, only vision, we commit to creating environments where every capable woman can rise, lead, and transform her world. Thank you all so much for being a part of Inside Today. I am Jumai Manson. Have an amazing day ahead. Bye-bye.